This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Well, we all woke up this morning to the absolutely tragic news coming out of Washington, D.C. about a plane crash involving some 60 people on a plane travelling into Washington, D.C.'s airport, colliding with a helicopter with 3 US soldiers on board. It is now believed that really it's going to be impossible that the 67 people in total actually involved in that collision will ever be found alive. That collision happened 9 o'clock Washington DC time last night. Very dark conditions, freezing cold river that the plane and the helicopter crashed into. A massive search and rescue mission was underway, some 300 responders, but really now very, very unlikely that anyone will be found alive. Let's talk about this with Alastair Rosenschein. He's a former British Airways pilot, now an aviation consultant. Good morning to you, Alastair.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, these crashes are, much rarer than people like to think. Whenever they happen, they are all over the news because people are, very concerned about these things, and people are often feeling, oh gosh, it could have been me. It seems like a horrific, awful accident that a helicopter collided with a passenger jet like this. How on earth, though, do these things happen?
Well, as you quite rightly say, they are awful. They're also very rare. There are many aircraft flying at the moment, more aircraft than have ever flown before. How does it happen? It's difficult. One would speculate on these things, but there is a helicopter route which flies up from the military airbase, which is south of the Washington Airport. And that flight path is called Route 4. And it follows the eastern side of the Potomac River. And as the helicopters approach the airport, they have to descend down to 200 feet. And that would be the maximum altitude they can go at. Now, this particular airliner was flying into runway 01 at Washington Airport, and they moved it over to runway 33. So it will have then changed its flight path, would have moved further to the east and directly over the helicopter route. So had the helicopter been above 200 feet, then that would cause the collision. The airliner would not have been below its normal approach path.
The airliner, as far as we know, was doing exactly as it was instructed by air traffic control at Ronald Reagan Airport.
Absolutely. That is what we understand. And we've no reason to think it was doing otherwise. So the question here would be, why did it contact this helicopter? So the helicopter pilot was told by air traffic control that there was an aircraft, a conflict, and could it see it? And,
yes, there's actually an audio of that saying, can you see it? Can you see this jet?
Yes, now that's not an unusual call for air traffic controller to make. So the pilot in this case said that he could see it. He may well have identified the wrong aircraft. And that is so easily done, especially at night, over a town like this with plenty of lights everywhere. So you can misidentify.
But is that one of the issues then? Why would the air traffic control not say, you are in line to collide with this jet, please adjust your height to X or Y? Why would there not been an instruction to the helicopter rather than a can you see it, knowing what you've just told us, that there are lots of other planes in the sky, lots of lights and lots of confusion?
What follows on from a pilot identifying another aircraft is that they then are able to maneuver to avoid a contact with that aircraft. And so that's the whole point of asking whether or not a pilot has seen it. Now, as far as the airline is concerned, the airline pilots are concerned, they'd be flying their jet into the airport, focusing on the runway, and not expected to divert because of the helicopter. No. The helicopter would be expected to divert because of the airliner. Now, the fact is there is a helicopter route and it is right next to the airport. So there is a constant risk that this could happen. But if the helicopters are below the height instructed on that route, then there should never be a collision.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen there has been a plane that's ditched into Potomac River before. I think it was 2018, because we all remember that famous incident, the Hudson River in New York, where The pilot was able to magnificently, I mean, it became a hit, Hollywood movie, was able to land the plane and get everybody, I think everybody out alive, even, despite, again, freezing conditions, people rushing to rescue. This scenario very different. It's at night, it's in the dark, it's in freezing cold January, temperatures in the water believed to be around 1 degree. Realistically, with a collision, and there is video footage appearing to show a collision and a fireball in the sky, realistically, would anybody even have survived the collision itself?
It would seem highly unlikely. I mean, certainly from the video, you can see that the aircraft plummets to the ground, hits the river within about 3 seconds of contact with the helicopter. The incident you referred to earlier with the Hudson River, and that was Captain Sully Sullenberger, was next military pilot. Now, in fact, he still had control of the aircraft, even though both engines had failed. But in this case, there is absolutely no control whatsoever. However, as we do mention aircraft going into rivers, in this case, there was in 1982 a Boeing 737-200 aircraft, it's a type model of aircraft I used to fly, which took off in icing conditions, and it flew straight into a bridge from runway 01. So it took off, flew into the bridge over the Potomac River and crashed there. And there were scenes of rescue attempts to get the passengers, those who survived, out of the water. Some of them perished because of the cold water, but there were survivors in that case. But all these accidents, they're completely different. There's no...
But that's it. The air accident investigators, they arrive on the scene very, very quickly, don't they? There is this airline industry sort of goes together and desperately tries to, find out what went wrong. Donald Trump has, tweeted or put on through social, his concern. This looks like an accident that shouldn't have happened. Do you think, the awful phrase "lessons will be learned"? But I mean, the airline industry, they often are. Do you think that things will change as a result of this busy airport?
No, undoubtedly. We have very few accidents now compared with the number of aircraft that are flying, and more aircraft flying now than ever before. And the number of accidents are quite rare. Now, unfortunately, we have had, in the last 5 weeks, actually 4 aircraft accidents. This collision, then there was one shot down by the Russians, and then another one careered off the end of a runway in South Korea into an earth bank. They're all quite different, but this is an extremely rare set of events. In fact, recently we had 18 months where not a single airliner anywhere in the world that had an accident. When I first started flying as an airline pilot, it was pretty much one every week.
So we always make a very big sort of a song and dance actually about every accident, even if there aren't any fatalities, as tragically there are, it appears in this case. But actually, it's all over the news. But as you say, they are few and far between. We'll have to leave it there. But I really appreciate your time. Great to get your expertise on air. Aviation consultant, former BA pilot, Alastair Rosenschein. I tell you what, Philip, I'd love to be in a plane that Alastair's flying. I'd feel very safe indeed.
Well, exactly. And all pilots are highly, highly trained. And
incredibly skilled
none
work.
could deal with a helicopter coming into the side of your aircraft.
It does sound like just an awful, tragic accident. But again, it does appear also there were children on board this plane. As we mentioned earlier, children going to an ice skating competition. So that at least 13 children on board. The 64 people believed to be on board, so passengers and crew on that passenger jet that is down. Any more developments, we'll bring them to you here.